Hello, everyone. Welcome to Digital Works TV. I'm Steve Johnson. My guest today is Ethan Couch. He is one of the founders of and general manager of Yellowhammer Brewing. That is what y'all call it, right?
Yes.
Yellowhammer Brewing. He makes beer. And, we do engineering-centric podcasts. We have another kind we do, but most of our podcasts are about engineering. But in chatting with you about making beer, and I'm hoping a few people are sitting up because they want to know about this.
Yeah.
I realized that the concepts in brewing a beer are very similar to the concepts in engineering, model-based systems engineering, where if you change one thing, it changes everything. And that's something you have to do. So tell me a little bit, and I told you we weren't going to get technical, but tell me a little bit about making beer. Kind of give us an overview of what's involved.
Sure. So luckily, the recipe is simple from a organizational standpoint. You got water, hops, malt, and yeast. So those are the,
Okay, very quickly, for my benefit, difference between hops and malt.
So hops are what's used for flavor and bittering.
Yeah.
And so it's a flower that like a little bud that grows on a vine, and the monks in Germany started using them. There was all kinds of bittering agents used throughout the history of beer, but hops they grow fast, they grow tall, and they were readily available, and so it became the most popular one. And then malt is a grain that's been malted. Basically, they spray a little water on it and it starts to sprout, and then they dry it out, and that gives you the maltose base that you need for the sugar. All
right.
And then the yeast are the key component there. And but I want to say that you talk about the systems engineering, and it kind of starts with the water. You really have to have good water, and so we're lucky in Huntsville.
Define good water.
Yeah. So you want it to be, it needs to be chlorine free, and so we have to filter it out. And Huntsville has really good water where we're at, and so we draw from.
But wait a minute. So now you just made me ask another question: where we're at?
Yes.
So in Huntsville, as I understand it, there's kind of a line that moves between treated water from the river,
yes,
and well water,
yes,
and well water. So. Where you're at is very close to the midpoint of that, where it probably goes back and forth.
Yeah, Northeast Huntsville is served from a well that's drawn from the Lincoln Mill, and so it's the only well in the city, and the city's basically shut down all the other wells that were around, and so they want to control that one, and it's it has good flow, and so we recognize we got lucky a little bit. Our first location was on Clinton, and we noticed the water's pretty good. And so it's got a little bit of hardness from the limestone in the area, but it's really clean. And when you taste it, it tastes clean and sharp. And so we do have to filter it because they do treat it with chlorine and fluoride. And so we have a charcoal filter, but we're lucky that that's all we need. A lot of breweries require an RO system, something that just takes everything out, and then you're left with like a really base water. And ours,
yes, there are some places along the river that may have had to have some pretty serious, had they had breweries to filter out various chemicals, but you don't have to worry about the chemical thing other than the additives like chlorine and fluoride.
And so we get it tested, and the quality changes, but we just want to make sure there's nothing in there that's going to harm our process.
Okay.
And so, but starts there, good water, and then we like to use high quality malt. We get malt from Canada right now. We get some malts from Germany and Belgium, and you can see the difference in that when you're comparing some of the ones, and then the hops, mostly Pacific Northwest, and so. They're very popularly grown there. It's got a perfect climate, and then we get those shipped in, and so that's what we start with. And the yeast is a really neat process, but there's a few laboratories, and they make different strains from all over the world. And so yeast is everywhere. It's ever present. It's floating around, and it loves sugar, and so it gets on fruit and eats the fruit.
Yeah,
And so you can naturally ferment, and that's what they used to do, just big open vats with the malted water, and then the yeast would naturally come in and eat it, and then make beer. And so that's how they used to make it, and you can still do that. A lot of people do it. Open fermentation is popular these days, but we control everything, and then we use different yeast strains for the specific styles. We've got a German yeast strain for lager, and then a Belgian one for like our Trappist ales, and then we'll use some stronger yeasts for, say, making rum that operate at a higher temperature and love sugar and molasses. And
okay, so it sounds kind of simple, except it sounds very complicated too, because I've tasted most of the beers you make, and they're not the same.
Yeah,
and yet the essential ingredients are the same.
Yeah.
So how
little nuance.
How does that work? How does if that was building a rocket engine? How do you make it? How do you do that?
So we try. It starts with the water. We try and match that water profile for the style of beer. So we might soften it up a little bit for, say, a Belgian style, or make it a little bit harder, adding calcium chloride or something like that. Basically adding some minerals back to give it a hardness, and that matches the profile of the area that it was made originally. So we do like a German style lager. We want it to taste crisp and clean, and then the Belgians are a little bit softer, and they got a little spice character, and so we'll manipulate the water a little bit, and then the malts. You can have kind of a more caramelized malt, like a roasted malt, and some of them are so dark that it'll, a handful make your beer taste like coffee. Like you have the Midnight Special, and it's got a roasty character. And then like a Rebellion Red Lager, we have a Vienna malt and a Munich malt, and those are a little bit toasted, and so they have a little bit of a caramel flavor to it. And so there's a lot of nuance in ingredients, some nuance in water, and then the hops. The hops are all over the place. We've got a chart that shows kind of a flavor profile.
Any of that stuff
one.
grown around here, by the way?
So Auburn University has done a lot to try and promote that, and so we've done some malts that they've had local farmers make, and we did a beer focused, solely using that malt. It's called Avalon, and it did well, and so they're trying to get farmers like something besides corn, cotton, soybeans that normally grow here. When their fields need a break, they can add this in. Okay. And but there might not be enough volume for a lot of people to do it.
Yeah,
but
and the thing is, any craft beer maker, another brewery like you change periodically, but you have some continuous beers.
Yes.
And so you need ingredients that are the same.
Yeah, and so there are some hops that can be grown here too. One of our partners, Don, has grown a bunch of, I want to say it was Cascade or Columbus hops here. So some of them actually do okay here, but nobody's doing it on a large scale. Yeah. And you kind of need that, and you need it to be consistent. And so it's much easier for us to get it from a major supplier, so we can kind of depend on that consistency and when we get it. But it is fun during fresh hop season when you can get them shipped in the day that they harvest and things like that. So we'll do a fresh hop IPA and stuff like that.
Okay, so you've got hops, malt, and yeast, and really good water.
Yeah.
And you've already said this. You manipulate the various ingredients to get a particular taste or style of beer. Is this the kind of thing? How much of it is experimentation, where you say, "Hey, dude, let's change the hops and put a different kind of hop and see what it does to the beer."
We're very lucky. Luckily, I'm not the brewer, and so James Glass, our head brewer, he's kind of like a chef, and so he reads a lot, and he'll get some stuff in, and we'll do some test batches. But he is very much experimental with these ingredients, but he kind of gets a profile, and in his head it makes sense, and so we've done over 500 styles of beer since we've opened, and
and that's manipulating the 4 ingredients.
Yeah, and occasionally you'll throw in some other things, like our Belgian white has some chamomile and lime leaves and things
Okay.
like that. But for the most part, it's those 4 ingredients.
But okay, so I guess you have a beer?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have maybe one of the standard beers that you make, or any craft brewer would have a standard beer? Does anybody ever say, let's change this and see what happens? And something would happen if you changed any one ingredient,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, 100%. And we have changed recipes on a popular style, and you want to talk about people getting upset, and sometimes we're forced to do it. It's sometimes we want to do it and say, I think we should head in this direction with this beer. I think it'll plus it up a little bit, and then sometimes it's like we can't get that malt anymore, that they went out of business, or we can't get that hop anymore, that the season was off, and so that happens, and then you have to do the best you can to make something as close as you can, and sometimes it is for the better, and no harm, no foul, and then sometimes you're like, you got a really popular beer and people are like, man, they changed the recipe, and that's that was my favorite beer.
And instead of doing your keeping track of all this digitally, you have to depend on the taste buds of the folks in charge and the brewmeister.
Yep.
So how's that working out? I mean, would you rather it was a computer?
Well, you kind of need both. And
can you do any of this digitally? Can you control how things taste digitally?
Well, we definitely have software to build recipes, and so you can get some idea of a few attributes of the beer from that. But we don't have anything, maybe that's coming, but AI that says like this is going to taste this way,
Has it been right so far?
Well, the software works just fine, but I was saying we don't have that AI
you
model.
don't have AI.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I'm assuming that'll come out at some point. But we do sensory every week, and
Sensory, what do you mean when you...
sensory. So we'll get a group together and we'll do tastings. Sometimes they're blind, and we do a lot of true to target, and so we keep a library of our beers that we make, and so we do that in case we can get a better handle on when this beer is going to age out, and if somebody calls and says like, I got this beer and it tastes sour, and so we can go to our library and pull that sample and be like, well, that must have been a one-off can. Maybe it got stored hot on the grocery store or on the truck or something. So it helps us keep track of it. But with that library, we'll pull out 6 or 7 beers each week from different dates, and we kind of see, we do have software for this too, where we track what the flavors we pick up, and you look at the clarity and the foam and how it smells, and then how it tastes and the mouthfeel. So it's got all these attributes, that are known for beer. And then we fill that out, and then we have that survey, and so we kind of know where the beer is headed, based on time, and then and if we feel like this is spot on, if we did make a recipe change, then we'll note it there, and that's how we can solidify, say, a change in the recipe.
So the date thing is like the military, for instance, the Army. They have missiles in inventory, and periodically
Gotta fire
they have to
off.
launch a missile to make sure that the things in inventory work as they're supposed to.
Yep.
So your sensory is something like that.
Yes.
Where you're checking to make sure that this is supposed to taste like this 5 months in, and if it's changed, why is it changed?
Right. And,
does it ever change?
Oh yes, and oxygen is kind of the killer of beer. So we when we grew a little bit 5 or 10 years ago, we added a lab and some equipment so we can test the oxygen level in our beers, and after they come off the line. So we'll test them all along the way in the process, but that oxygen level will definitely give us an idea of the shelf life of that product, and it might say this is good for 3 months, or if it's got really low oxygen level, it might be good for 6 months, and it's really neat to see how that works and the things that we can do to, and the guy that sold it to us tested a can of Budweiser, and it had a very low oxygen level. So it's got the longest shelf life, and they need that,
So oxygen is another ingredient. So you've got your water.
It's an X factor.
Your water, your oxygen, your main ingredients, and if you change anything, you change the whole thing, don't you?
Yep. And it can be very subtle, and a lot of people won't notice, but we might notice, and especially if we're trying.
Oh yeah, and if somebody purchases a 6-pack of beer from a store, they're assuming it's good.
Yeah.
And they're assuming when they open a can that this is the way it's supposed to taste.
Right. And so you might ruin a customer if you have a bad product out there. So we do a lot of date. We have date stamp every beer. And so
the Best Buy. Hey, let's take a quick time out for some great news. Open enrollment is here. DigitalWorks Pro is offering a series of courses on model-based systems engineering. First up, an introduction to MBSE. This short course is designed for executives, managers, and senior leaders who want to know more about model-based systems engineering. The course explains what MBSE is, why it matters, and how it can improve the scope of projects, from cost to schedule to quality. You will be more than ready to support your organization when it inevitably adopts MBSE. Again, enrollment is open right now. To make sure you have a seat, scan the QR code on your screen or go to the link at our website, digitalworks.org. To make sure there's a spot for you, register and do it now. Are there people out there that don't get that you buy a 6-pack of beer, put it in your basement for 2 years, is not going to taste good?
Unfortunately, we've had those phone calls, yes. And I was like, did you check the date? And it's like, yeah, it says, March 2024. And I was like, okay, that beer is no good. And, our shelf life tends to be from 3 to 6 months max on most beers. And there's some that last a little bit longer. We know that from sensory but
you're depressing me right now. I've got some. Now, if it's kept cold, it lasts longer.
Yes,
that is a saving
true
grace.
statement. Yep.
I guess I'm intrigued by the fact that there are so many separate things that can mess up.
Very nuanced.
The product. Mm-hmm. Did you know all that when you and your buddies got into this business?
No.
Let's make some beer.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. We, this was a fun thing for us to do, and we had a good start, but at the time we weren't making enough to where we were having to worry about inventory and things like that. And then once we were, then you learn all the difficulties and what you can do to help and protect, your brand but yeah, we had no idea.
It's interesting. You're in. I would imagine that any brewer in Huntsville is going to sell a whole lot of beer to engineers.
Yes.
So I'm just curious. Do engineers give you feedback? I mean, well, no, excuse me. How much feedback do engineers give you?
It is a very scrutinizing community, and I think that's good. Like, we need to get feedback, and we do have a lot of engineers that come in, and a lot of home brewers, engineers that are home brewers, and so they get a lot of good feedback. And
do people still do that? I mean, a lot of folks. I know a guy who used to brew beer, and I asked him if he was still doing it. He said, "Why should I? Everybody else is. I buy it at the store, and it's brewed down the street."
It was more popular when the laws were a little bit more strict, and you couldn't get what you wanted, and so you could just make it. And it's also a fun thing to do, right? And it's neat. It is scientific. You brew this, you put it in your basement for 3 weeks, and then you open it up, and it's there, and it's a bit of a science experiment, and so I think a lot of people enjoyed it, and I know there are some people that still do, and we'll sell ingredients to those folks sometimes, and equipment, but we've got a good relationship with a lot of the home brewers in town, and they do competitions and things. We'll help judge those and things like that, and so it's still around. It's not as prevalent as it used to be, for exactly those reasons.
But and the fact that it is. I mean, you said it's scientific, making beer. Yeah. It is about as engineering centric as any product that you could think of.
I think 70% of what we do is clean. So everything has to be spotless, and another X factor would be bacteria. So
and that's the because when you brew it, it goes into big vats before it's okay. Yeah. So keeping that vat from having there's a little spot of mold about as big as your fingernail it would destroy the whole.
Yeah, it can.
Has that happened?
We've had maybe one or two, and it happens more with yeast strains, like some yeast strains are aggressive, and they will outcompete the one that you're pitching for that batch. And so if something, say yeast from a prior batch was left on a cap or something at the top of the tank, and then
So so when you go from one batch to another, you don't just wipe them down.
no.
You have to sterilize that stuff, don't you?
There's a pretty kind of religious process we have to do, and then there's some deep cleaning that we have to do. It has some buildup, just like calcium buildup on the tanks. They call it beer stone. So you got to make sure none of that's there, because that can be a place for bacteria to hide and things like that. But again, luckily, we gotten a little bit more scientific. We can test for all that now, so we kind of know what we're dealing with, and so we might have had one or two batches in the past 5 years that got compromised,
Okay.
but it's usually from another yeast strain that was aggressive.
When did it dawn on you? Probably pretty quickly once you started trying to sell product and make money, how complicated and how dependent on so many things making beer is.
Yeah, it's always, I learn something every day, and so I like that part of the job, and so something's always new, but it's normally a problem that I'm having to figure out, and that can be either fun or difficult or both, and so it's always been that way, because in the beginning it was more about starting a business, and so that had its own challenges, and then it became growing the brand, and then that's got its own challenges, and I feel like we're always in a state of growth, and we definitely want to keep growing, and so we're constantly having to learn what that's going to take, and it is a challenge.
Okay, so an engineer, say somebody who works on missiles, they can look at like the rocket park at the Arsenal, or go by the Space and Rocket Center, and they look and they kind of get what was involved building that real thing. I mean, someone works on cars at Mazda Toyota. They look at a Mazda, people don't have a clue.
Yeah.
So when they look at your beer, when somebody is drinking one of your beers, what do you want them to think about? I know what you think about. If they only knew how much trouble this was. but what do you want the average, even an engineer drinking your beer, what do you want them to think?
I think for us, our two of our big tenets are quality and consistency. And so I feel like if you have those down as a craft brewer, you have a good chance of succeeding. There's a lot of things that could, hinder that or make it more difficult. But if the beer is good, and we consider it a quality product, and then the next time they come in and get that beer, it's very similar to what they had before, then that's how you grow a business and a brand in the brewing industry. And it baffles me that there are brands that don't have that focus and still succeed. And but for me, that's what I believe in, and that's how we're focused on this business. So.
And you also want them to know if it tastes different, we meant for it to, because we changed something.
Yeah, I hope that they're a little forgiving if we have to make some changes. But yeah.
All right. Is this as complicated as it is it a fun business?
Oh, 100%. Like at the end of the day, you get to have a beer. So like it's hard not to enjoy the difficult stuff, because, it is for what I would consider a good purpose. You have some community there, and we're lucky that we have a tap room, and can get to see people enjoying the product, and you do get good positive feedback, and we get a lot of people telling us, you guys got the best beer in town, and this feels great, and that's what we're shooting for.
And it's a competitive business.
Very competitive. We caught the wave early, and when we started, there was only one other brewery in town, and we had no idea that two other breweries were going to open up within 6 months of us. That was Straight Tail and Blue Pants, and then all of a sudden that became its own wave in Huntsville, and it was very popular, at the beginning, and that kind of helped propel, and along with Free the Hops and the people who were really wanting, and campaigning for this to be a fun thing in Alabama, and it changed everything, and so here we are now.
All right, Ethan Couch, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Happy to talk to you.
The fact that you didn't bring any beer with you has me a little angry, but we'll let
Yep.
it go.
Come by later on. We'll have one.
All right, thank you. And thank you for being with us here on Digital Works TV. And do not forget, especially when it's craft beer, it works.